Our first kind of attempt at our first kind of run at doing a text together, or two texts, I suppose. And our first habit of mind is the integration of knowledge, and it's grounded in the first value on the chart, Jesus Christ. And so for that, we read this selection from Ex Corde Ecclesia. Ex Corde Ecclesia means from the heart of the church, and the idea is that the Catholic University is so central to what the church is, that the university is a kind of a gift from the very heart of the church. So I thought that what we might do right now is just kind of talk about it the way that you might talk about it with your groups, and then kind of see what comes from that. So an opening question that I had from, for you to answer from your reading of this selection is what should, based on, there are 1,000 ways to answer this question, but based on what you read from the document, what does the document say the Catholic University should look like?
A community.
Yeah, so it talks a lot about community, and it gives some content to what that community should be. What kind of community is it?
Community of scholars.
Faith and scholarship. That's somewhere else. I got that from somewhere else. But yeah, community of scholars. So a community of people kind of pursuing a common goal of the truth. What else? Yeah.
Not just on the community thing, not just a whole bunch of people who are Catholic, but a bunch of people who are actually institutionally embracing that.
Yeah, and actually, it doesn't even have to be a bunch of people who are Catholic.
Right.
It's not so much the individual. It doesn't. We don't get our Catholic character from the individuals primarily, but from the institutional commitments. So, on the one hand, scholars pursuing truth and kind of shared commitment to Catholic values. What else does the document say that the Catholic University should be like?
Well, students are seeking truth too, right? It's a common effort with students and scholars.
Where students are scholars.
Yeah, students as scholars. Good.
It said that it should unite things that we often see as opposed, which is truth or faith and the outside world, and that that our faith should be an intellectual pursuit to relate faith to the outside world or outside reality.
Yeah. So we're integrating faith and life. That's not the only thing it talks about bringing together, though.
Faith and reason.
Yeah, faith and reason. But even those aren't the only things it talks about bringing together.
And kind of reflection and service.
Yeah. Kind of service, kind of truth and service, let's say. For not just for the university, but for the church,
Right. So
or the whole world, right? Yeah. But even this isn't the only things that it talks about bringing together. We should integrate
Excellence in humanistic and cultural development with specialized professional training.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful. Sorry.
The disciplines. So there's this kind of hope that that somehow what they're learning in one class can be related to what they're learning in a different class. That there might be some way of drawing connections between psychology and biology, or theology and psychology. That you could kind of like get a worldview, I guess, out of this education. what other hopes does it have for Catholic education? Or I should say a Catholic university, Catholic school.
Living union of truth. Talking about a living union of truth together.
Yeah, so kind of a communal life that is inspired, I guess you could say, by Christian virtues. It has this really nice kind of paragraph about what the university community should look like. The source of its unity springs from a common dedication to truth and the dignity of the human person and the person and the message of Christ. So kind of looking at this list of what a Catholic university or college should look like, I think a question that came to my mind, a second question you could ask, is how is a Catholic education different than a non-Catholic education? How does being a Catholic school make the school component of our college different than a non-Catholic college? So this is a question that I can illustrate with this story. I mean, it's not a great story. In the 1890s, the Archbishop of Minneapolis in St. Paul, John Ireland, was trying to build like schools for his people, and that's a lot of money. So he set up this arrangement where they'd have a public school where the nuns taught during the day, and then at the end of the school day, the nuns would teach a catechism class, and he felt pretty good about this. But it inspired a whole kind of controversy that eventually went all the way to the Vatican. He had to shut it down. It wasn't good enough. It was missing something, right? Being a regular school with religion classes at the end wasn't enough to be a Catholic school. So I guess that kind of raises the question: what on this list of what we hope a Catholic school will be? Is possible because we're a Catholic school, as opposed to being a school that has like a church attached to it.
The integration function.
Yeah, and that's the hope, right? And that's not necessarily what I think what we would normally jump to is saying like, what makes us Catholic is like we integrate things, because often what we want to say is what makes us Catholic is, right, like we have these mass times, and we have these classes you have to take here, and there are people dressed funny all over the place. Right? So, but no, habits and mass times aren't what makes it a Catholic education. So, so how is integrating a particularly Catholic thing?
So just for clarification, do you mean the difference between a Catholic education and then a public, a secular, like a state school?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be just state. I mean, it could be, Baker. I don't know anything about Baker.
Right, but something that's not necessarily as... Yeah, something that was founded maybe as, aren't they Methodists or something like that? But don't necessarily...
I think the Methodists.
Yeah, I don't know. but I mean, the point is that they don't necessarily integrate that into their entire education like we do, right?
Yeah, so there's this kind of... Because when you look at... I was just doing Donut Cases. When you look at Ex Corde Ecclesia, the way that John Paul II describes the privileged task of the university is that we unite through intellectual effort two orders of reality that too frequently tend to be placed in opposition. And so it's that integrating that is our privileged task. And you could easily raise the question, well, why is that a uniquely Catholic thing? What is Christian about that? Because in each of these values, what we're trying to do is to give an intellectual interpretation of the value. why is it that the intellectual, or how is it that the intellectual relevance, the relevance of Jesus Christ to our intellectual life is the ability to integrate? I don't think that's what most people would necessarily jump to.
So are you talking about Christ being both human and God?
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with that kind of, that divine heart of Christ. And it's specifically that that Christ is not just God and man, but that Christ is Logos and man, right? So it gets to this, like, difficult question of, what Logos is.
You're getting at order here.
Come again?
You're getting at order.
Yeah, I think order is a really important part of it, right? So when we said Logos, John Paul uses the word Logos, and I attempted a quick kind of like overview of what this word means. It's a Greek word. If you ever want the students to feel like they're really getting their money, right? You can write, write it in Greek. Oh, I am in college. But when we use the word Logos, Greek for it's technically Greek for the word, but it's Greek for a lot of stuff, really. Logic comes from that. What do we mean by the claim that Christ is the Logos?
Actually, today in my logic class, I had a funny experience. One of the students was having a theology class when we brought up the first of the categories. Started asking about, isn't it this long word about with Lucia in there about what's interesting to me is we might want to re-evaluate also in the core curriculum issue, because only 1 out of 10 or maybe less than that students are required to take logic.
Yeah, that's a really good question. But I think just the what is bound up in the discussion of Logos is the possibility of a core curriculum. Like the idea that there could be classes of relevance across majors, and we say that there are, and that what you're going to do will cohere in some meaningful way. And we say that because there's this idea of Logos, right? So kind of recalling the reading, what account would we give of Logos? It's order, but it's more than order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, anything that we teach our students that's true is somehow a glimpse into God's perfect self-understanding.
Yeah, that's right. Logos, in a sense, is the account that God gives us of Himself. Or in another way, you could say Logos is the plan that God has for the world. The ideas, the sum total of ideas that God has about the world. And in the way that the Greeks, the Hindus to an extent, certain kinds of Hindus, the Christians, in the way that the philosophers talk about Logos, it's not just God's description of Himself, God's understanding of Himself, God's idea of Himself. It's not just God's idea of the world, but it's also the plan that God followed in making the world. So that the whole world, the universe, is made according to the Logos, according to God's single plan for it.
Could draw their attention to the fact that universe and university are very closely linked.
And that's true, right? Because in the university you try to give an account of all things, and the very idea that you can give a single account of all things is rooted in this claim that the universe as we know it comes from the single mind of God, and that God is consistent within Himself, and so there's no truth that can contradict another truth. And this is not something that's universally shared. If you have a strictly materialist or positivistic view of the world, this thing is what it is, that thing is what it is, Maybe you can give a common account of them both. Maybe you can't. There's nothing that necessarily unites them. But a Catholic can claim, because the whole world comes from the Logos, who is Jesus Christ, a Catholic can claim that well-done psychology is not going to conflict with well-done theology, is not going to conflict with well-done biology, because you're all describing a common thing, the universe, which comes from a common planet.
There's one, I think, also an incredibly important feature, although it's speaking not out of philosophical perspective, the claim that Christ makes in the beginning of John's Gospel, the Logos is a person.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is not to be ignored. Can I have a minute? All right. So the idea that all our different fields can be related to each other without conflict when they're done well is the idea of integrating the disciplines into a common vision of truth and a common account of reality. And then, when it comes to kind of theology specifically, what we're saying is that in Jesus, we have the Logos coming to us in a new way. The Logos comes to us, and we can understand it by analyzing the world according to the different disciplines that you all teach. And then the Logos comes to us in a new way with human face, and teaches us the doctrines of Christianity. And so we're making the further claim that not only does philosophy well-done philosophy not contradict well-done chemistry, we're also making the claim that the Christian faith, rightly understood, is not going to come to an impassable conflict with any of these fields. And that's a kind of an opening premise. Good biology is not going to conflict with good theology. And to make good on that promise, you're going to have to do a lot of work that tends in most places not to be rewarded in the academy, and so it doesn't often get done. And it's hard to do, and it requires a lot of study and a lot of kind of careful listening across fields. I worked at another school where they were trying to put together a core revision, and it was awful and complicated, and there was fighting. And someone said, one of the theologians said, we should talk about the evolutionary debates. And one of the scientists said, there is no debate, we won, right? and that was just talking in two different modes, talking past each other, right? Because, the theologian wasn't saying evolution's up for debate, they're saying, let's look back at these past events. And the scientist wasn't looking at it historically, I suppose. But that's a failure to do the careful work of listening to each other, which is necessary to do any of this integrating. So there's this kind of second hope that because the Logos is not just the logical order that unites everything in the world and the logical order that unites all of our fields, the Logos is also a person who speaks to us as Christ and teaches the doctrines of Christianity. There's this hope that academic study and the articles of faith that Christians hold finally cohere together, also in a kind of accurate description of the way things are. But that takes careful study and careful work. But that's the work of integration, which is the privilege of the Catholic College, to integrate the disciplines with each other and reason's work in the disciplines with faith. So here I thought a good question to ask would be, what are some of the dangers of this hope? If we have this hope that you could integrate faith and reason, and you can integrate the many disciplines, how could that go badly? What would that look like? What would it look like to do that? What are the dangers?
You mean to do it badly, or how does it look like when it's not done?
Either way, I guess we could say, what are the dangers of not doing it,
right,
on the one hand, and what are the dangers of doing it badly?
Paragraph 16 says, integration of knowledge is a process one which will always remain incomplete. So it's important to know that in this life, it's never going to be perfect. The explosion of knowledge in recent decades, together with the rigid compartmentalization of knowledge within individual academic disciplines, makes the task increasingly difficult. So, from a student perspective, right, if you only know people in your major and you only talk about things in your major, and then in a sense you have to make an effort to go and meet people, talk to people, and one of the reasons why we have the core curriculum is so that people can have a common ground to have an academic discussion across disciplines. So they're not siloed, each one independently.
And I think if we continue in the vein of the danger of leaving it undone, the danger of not trying to integrate our work, then the danger is, one sense of the danger is, that you're giving up the idea that education can form you for your whole life. And education really becomes limited to job training or limited to your intellectual, your very specific intellectual, hobbies. Whereas if you say that integration is possible, that allows for the hope that education can shape your whole life. That no aspect of human life is isolated from this this quest for intellectual formation, and that's a really awesome hope. It's actually one of Joseph Ratzinger's proofs for God's existence is we can do this work of integration. And if it seems that the things I learn about logic also applies to the things that I learn in physics, and also applies to high mathematical theory. If it does seem that there are kind of common laws, common logic that informs all of the different aspects of human life, then that's a kind of argument for God's rational design of the world. It's the existence of God that provides the intellectual assumptions and substrata to do integration across disciplines. And if you didn't have that, if you took out the logos, then you'd have no reason. And you'd have no reason to think that different fields would fit. That the different fields would be puzzle pieces in a picture of a whole. But one of the things that makes people not excited about integration is that A, it's hard, but B, it can be done badly, and when it's done badly, this is what would that look like? What would it mean, to return to that question, to do integration badly? What are the risks of trying to?
There's two risks. One would be homogenizing approaches so that one univocal understanding, for example, the positivists, we're going to have one scientific vocabulary that it's going to apply as a cookie cutter across the board, and you would all think this way.
Yeah, and you could assume that there's one method of inquiry, one discipline that could understand any human phenomenon. And then you're trying to do
reductionism.
Yeah, you're trying to do a reductionistic kind of purely biological account of my reaction to looking at Monet, and that's going to lend itself to a kind of absurdity.
Another approach that would the contrary extreme would be radical pluralism without even a relationship between one discipline and another. So this would be sort of keeping utterly diverse silos. So there's the totalitarian extreme, and if you want a quasi-existence of like a reapplication of the problem of the one and the many, we want to go having somebody in charge, and be Joseph Stalin instead of Ratzinger.
All right, so we could over-apply one discipline. What other things can we do that would be doing integration badly?
I think you're done.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Because it says right here, right, like this is an open-ended process. We're not going to finish because, tomorrow they're going to discover, some new insight in quantum mechanics, and I'm going to have to rethink some stuff, right? Hugh St. Victor, Lotus Hugh St. Victor, the most important person ever. I wrote my dissertation on Hugh St. Victor.
One discipline.
He thought he had a great synthesis of everything, and then we figured out that the world was round, and you had to rethink something. So you could try to kind of achieve a closed system. But there are other ways this could go wrong. And the document, if you draw on the document, you'll see some themes that the Pope is concerned about having us avoid doing. Integration is good, but another problem would be compromising integrity. So I guess a theme for this talk could be integration and integrity, because he talks about the integrity of disciplines. What does that mean, the integrity of disciplines? Why, it's a consistent theme. Why does he think it's important?
I was going to say, how wide can the menu be in a Mexican restaurant before it ceases to be a Mexican restaurant? You know what I mean?
I often ask myself that at a Chinese buffet that has pizza and brownies, and then you kind of wonder, we're just serving food now, right?
In the Chinese tradition.
I'm going to imagine that.
All right. So we could kind of one discipline again to try to do too much. What would be another example of compromising? Trying to fit everything together in a way that compromises a discipline's integrity.
Yeah, well, I can think of a decent example. I've had a few students lately that are upset I don't offer more of the Catholic view of the Puritan settling of New England, to which I've responded, there is no Catholic view, because, if I'm trying to appease them, and I will compromise my integrity by trying to wedge a Catholic view into a situation historically where there is no Catholic view.
Yeah, this is precisely it. It's the intrusion of other disciplines and unrelated phenomena into well-done history. And John Paul II would say, well, that doesn't help anyone. And in fact, you shouldn't be suspicious of me standing up here saying, there's Jesus is the Logos and you can integrate, because I'm not trying to get you to do something that's not history.
Right.
Because you can only integrate that which is done well. And so this is not code for theology is going to, all your bases belong to us. But it is a hope that we can make a cohesive account of the world as it is through good biology and history responsibly done.
Right. I point out to students that a good Catholic movie doesn't only have to have good Catholic themes; it has to be a good movie. Right. So if it stinks as a movie, it's unworthy to carry the message.
I think that's good.
So a good Catholic biologist has to be a good biologist.
And what are some ways that we could compromise the discipline's integrity? Well, the philosopher could say, no, you have to, work a philosophy of history into, how you're teaching historiographical naturalism. That could be, depending on how you do that, helpful or unhelpful. Or we could say, I know something through faith in Jesus, the human face of the Logos. It's true. I am taking your class, and you're trying to aim at the true. What I know is true by faith, I can just assert is true in your class. But that's skipping a really important step. That's skipping the actual work of thinking through by your discipline the topic we're getting at. And so while there's a confidence that what we know from the Logos through the human face of Jesus will not conflict with what you learn through your discipline done well. Just because I know something by faith doesn't mean I know it by your discipline. And you can't shortcut that. That's what the integrity of the disciplines means. And that's important, important to maintain the intellectual character of the school. So what do we think about that? Does this make us excited for the work of integrity? Is this something that actually doing seems very distant when you're teaching intro classes? What are some of the ways that we at Benedictine attempt integrity and attempt integration of disciplines?
You see experience.
Yeah. Here we're trying this. My hope is that, with a kind of understanding of what we mean by Logos, a bunch of adults who are smart can teach it, and that it doesn't take too much more specialization than that, and that it's not alien to hopefully what you're trying to do either.
In ethics, I think one of the things that we try to do is explore both the moral virtues and the intellectual virtues.
Yeah, that's right.
And I assume that in theology, the theological virtues would not be ignored.
Yes. So what the document hopes for then is if the many disciplines can fit together because we can integrate them, the document hopes that we'll do kind of work together across their disciplines. The document hopes we'll do interdisciplinary studies. So in paragraph 20 it says, given the close connection between research and teaching, the research qualities indicated above will have their influence on teaching. When each discipline is taught systematically and according to its own methods, interdisciplinary studies, assisted by a careful and thorough study of philosophy and theology, enable students to acquire an organic vision of reality and to develop a continuing desire for intellectual progress. So, as a school, we're committed to Discovery Day, which is interdisciplinary. At least the Discovery courses are. As a school, we're committed to interdisciplinary kind of core formation, or at least a general education. As a school, we're committed to a rather larger number of kind of distribution requirements than many schools have, and that's because we think that all of this will fit together in a constructive way. So we could summarize what I'm hoping we'll get from Ex Corde Ecclesia. We could summarize it by saying the truth arrived at by faith aligns and doesn't contradict the truth arrived at in the disciplines, and the truth arrived at in the various disciplines aligns with each other. They work together. And so that what you know across the different disciplines you can integrate into a single vision of the world, and you can even act in a constructive way across disciplines. And that's why we had our second reading for today, which was about Wangari Maathai, kind of using a variety of disciplines, the results of a variety of disciplines, integrating them in a more humanistic and constructive way. So looking at the clock, I'm just going to sit down.
And I will turn around. How about that? So before we talk much about Wangari integrating disciplines, let me just ask you, have any of you ever considered that you might, even right now this semester, have someone like her in your class? Has that entered your thought process? If you've thought of that, what does that feel like? What does that trigger in you?
What do you mean by like her?
Someone that may be the next Wangari Maathai, right? Maybe in a whole other area, right? But that level of
Well, it's not just one. The Vision 2020 for the college says we are developing graduates that are going to transform the world.
Okay.
So in my leadership class, I say, I don't care if you have a biology major, an economics major, theology, nursing, whatever else, you're going to go out and transform the world. And you don't have to win a Nobel Peace Prize to transform the world. Each and every one of us should make the world better. So,
and most of us don't win a Nobel Peace Prize, right? But have any of you considered that you might have a future Nobel Peace Prize winner or someone of that caliber in front of you in one of your courses? Nick, you said yes. What does that feel like for you?
Well, actually, let me tell you how it feels, and I actually changed how I feel a little bit after this reading, because when I see someone like that, I think, oh man, I just don't want to mess this person up. But it's clear from this reading that she was transformed by her experience here, so even though she had that potential for greatness, she still needed people to push her and develop that in her. So even if we have somebody who has some kind of gifts that we think maybe we don't even have, we still are in a position to really help them.
Good. So there's a responsibility there, right? And there's maybe something about that might jazz you up a little bit, right? Well, wouldn't that be amazing to contribute even just a little bit to that person's intellectual development, right? Even if I could give them one thing, totally worth getting out of bed in the morning, right? So I guess I would encourage you when you're thinking about Wangari to think about that context that we all have in front of us every single day, right? That opportunity to be that person to all these students, whether they're leading in this capacity or any other capacity, right? I would also encourage you guys to let your students get to know who Wangari Maathai is, to show them photographs of her, maybe to find a video clip of her speaking. Let them try to introduce themselves to her, right? To find out who she really is or who she was, and what that might mean for them and their time here at Benedictine and in college in general, I guess. So some things about Wangari that I think are telling are that she had a pretty unique childhood for her time and place. Her parents prioritized her education as a young girl, even along with her brothers, in a time and place where most young girls weren't going to school and being formally educated. I think so. That was a big part of what set her up to take the path that she was on. Certainly, was her parents saying, "Well, of course, we're going to send you to school too with your brothers, and we're not going to keep you home to sweep the floor or whatever." Right? And then she came to the United States in the 1960s, to the Midwest. What do you think that must have been like for her? A young African woman, black African woman, entering the United States, the Midwest, small town Midwest in the 1960s, the early 1960s.
I think that if you read her account of that as coming here, most people got dropped off on the east, and there was like 2 of them on the bus. Yeah. And they hit Atchison. It's like, whoa, you know, this is a lot different from New York where we came in. And what am I going to find here? You know, it was...
She talks about encountering some prejudice in a cafe in Indiana, and then the reception at the Mount being completely different from what she had. I mean, and on page 92, she says, "My 4 years at the Mount and the experiences I had both on and off the campus nurtured in me a willingness to listen and learn, to think critically and analytically, and to ask questions. These skills stayed with me wherever I went from then on." Right? I mean, that's a liberal arts education. I mean, it's at least some of the fruits of liberal arts education that she says became part of her for the rest of her life. I mean, that's a win there.
So her context was pretty unique, right? Her particular education as a young girl in Kenya was pretty unique. The context she stepped into here as a university student in small town Atchison, 1960, was, well, I can't even imagine the contrast between what she would have been used to in her village and what she saw and encountered when she came to the United States. So I guess I would ask, what lenses did she have? Not just what lenses did her education here give her, but what lenses did she have as a human being? We all have different lenses, right? Different perspectives on that we can sort of take in front of our eyes when we need to walk around something and look at it from different angles. What lenses did Wangari have? She was educated. She was educated, yeah. And that, I think, was a really important lens for her to allow her to be able to do what she did. Sure. What else?
It's like she came with a real openness, to come to a different continent like that and be willing to be influenced by strangers you've never met and so on. To me, that shows a complete side of her that was very open to humanity, to other people. And I've seen that in a number of students from other continents. They come and they seem to have, and I don't know that she was this way, but they seem to have this willingness to encounter you and then on your own terms and just deal with you and learn what you have. And I find that very appealing.
Okay. Anything else? Any other lenses?
She was a problem solver. I mean,
She's definitely a problem
you have a
solver.
problem, and you just throw your hands and say, well, we can't
Yeah.
do anything. I mean,
Exactly.
and don't take no for an answer, and
Yeah.
what can I do to at least make it better, and go from there. So
Sure.
always being optimistic and trying to make your community, yourself, the people you're with better.
Okay.
She was really aware of nature. She was really aware of her surroundings. I don't know her as well as the rest of you do, but she described being aware that the reason she saw the water trickling was because of the fig tree, and so she knew that it was a fig tree, and she knew that there was a relationship between that and the rock that was broken.
Sure. All right. So that brings me to the connections, right? To clarify, see if there's any need for clarification among these relationships between all the things that kind of got her started with this Greenbelt movement. Because the text, I wanted to sort of do some background thinking about Wangari as a person, Wangari as a student, Wangari as a human being. But the text really isn't necessarily her as a person, but the Greenbelt movement that she began, that she started. So, yeah.
Well, I think her feminism is a really important lens as well.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's fostered by her parents, and I think confirmed by her time in the United States.
Probably, yeah.
And I think we see that in the Greenbelt movement's concern for women's well-being.
So when she does notice a problem, she doesn't go, oh, well, I'm just a woman, there's nothing I can do about it. Or not even, oh, well, there's a problem and there's nothing anybody can do about it, right?
Right.
She says, I'm going to do something, and not just anything, but thinks about it and figures out what the one thing might be. And maybe that's not the only possible answer to this problem, but one thing that might make a difference, right? One catalyst that might spread out and cause some change, okay? So I want to see if we can map out some relationships among things like colonialism, and where would you go from there? Like, what's the next, if we say, so we've given colonialism, what? In her sort of experience.
Dependency.
Okay, of native
That's what they were planning what Britain wanted, not things that were
Okay.
necessarily.
Can we go some steps in between there, and can we come back to that in a second?
Deforestation.
Okay, so say maybe environmental degradation, which would include deforestation, erosion, all those problems that come together, sure. What else? So before we got to the monocultures, what else?
Social degradation of the
Okay.
family, or
So-
family degradation.
Disempowerment, maybe? Of native cultures, right? Which maybe we could say led to planting monocultures. Okay, what else? What else fits in there?
Well, in the vocabulary, at least it's in modern Catholic social doctrine, we would be speaking of the injustice that would be involved in violating the principle of subsidiarity.
Okay. Can we leave that here?
I think that's what that's the structure of it.
Okay. What else?
I'm trying to put it into because she read it, and I was trying to relate it to the text of, about Logos and God's plan for the world there is an order in the natural world, and she describes that order, and their way of life was based in that natural order.
This, right? It worked.
Right, it worked, and once that changed with colonialism, all of that changed, and all of that natural order was put into disorder. And so she had the background and the science background and the historical background to recognize that. She saw it in the culture, people, their physical health, and so there were all these things that she recognized, and so her step was to try to restore one little bit of order.
Exactly. So ultimately, in this story, right, that she tells about how she got to starting this Green Belt movement was that the fig tree was gone, right?
Mm-hmm. Try
Say that it was lost, but it wasn't really lost, it was cut down, right? With that loss of the fig tree, you get a loss of firewood.
Mm-hmm. And water.
You get a loss of the stream.
Right, topsoil.
Because of the loss of that stream, you get the loss of drinking water, cooking water. And what happened when they lost cooking water?
Starvation.
Well, but why? So they had to, they ate
Combined with
their traditional food was something that needed to be cooked for a long, long time in boiling water. And so if you don't have that luxury of clean, drinkable boiling water, working water for your cooking, you have to eat something else. So when they eat something else, let's say dietary changes for the worse, ultimately leading to malnutrition and disease. So she goes back home and sees this, right? And then ultimately walks it back and goes, oh, well, also the fig tree's gone. And she gets from here to there, right? I don't know how long this took her. She said it took her a while. It took a long time to connect those things. And then however long it took, right? She persevered through and made those connections, and then said, well, what do I do about this? Right? Not what does my government do about this? What does my city leader do about this? What does my father do about this? But what do I do about this? And what did she do? What link did she try to fix here? It's too late to fix this, ultimately, right? She couldn't go clear back there. But she started in here, right? She started in there, fixing that problem. And even from some of that, I was going to see how there was some connection here to human rights even, and some connection to empowering women to do things actively to benefit their communities, right? There's that map of connections, and you could draw this probably several different ways, right? But are those connections clear enough for you guys that you feel like you could demonstrate this?
And then also, and eventually, because of the urbanization, high unemployment was another stream coming into this.
Sure.
So this is a way that you could get people working and doing something worthwhile.
And do we understand this link? Mm-hmm. That's kind of an important one. Not just that it was, but why it was. What was the link there?
The roots of the fig tree.
The roots of the tree reached down and cracked into, made fissures in the rock, right? And that allowed the groundwater to come up and bubble up into a stream. When the tree disappeared, rock caves in, right? Stream stays underground. The reservoir stays underground. Water stays underground. Is that link okay? Okay. It's one thing to say, well, the tree went away and the stream went away, but to really understand that connection there.
I think it's important too to put, because when she did that, when just planting those trees, all of that power structure came down to stop it. I mean, because doing that one thing, she wasn't right. That one little tiny thing was like this major pushback, and beat up, went to prison. I mean, all of these power structures came caving down to keep that order in place that she was disrupting with that one act.
What makes her, and what ties this together is that she persisted. So she kept at it. And the same
Trees don't grow quickly, right?
Exactly. And put yourself in her shoes to get beat up about this. But she was persistent and kept doing it in the face of huge adversity. And it ties back to the relation because we have to be persistent in integration as well, right? There's persistence to that. The students have to be persistent in their education.
I think something that now that you and Daphne said that made me kind of appreciate another connection is, we want to say that the synthesis that we're working towards is life-giving when you're able to make these connections. And it's when you were ignoring, the knowledge that, that women had, right? It's when you were ignoring the kind of native understandings of how the planting cultures would work, the plant cultures would be sustainable. It was ignoring, some areas of knowledge and systematically privileging others that you get this kind of degradation of the environment. So a synthesis is life-giving, and the ignoring of knowledge from other areas is damaging and leads to a certain kind of death, I suppose.
And the thing that I thought about that goes back to is this idea of over-applying one type of knowledge, which you talked about earlier, right? Colonialism is an over-application of one person's tastes onto, and so...
One person's priorities.
And priorities, yeah. And so whether it, comes through disempowerment, comes through with the financial power to, incentivize someone doing something that's not actually in their interests, I think that's another way to connect it back into that idea of recognizing the value in a knowledge that's not your own.
So I guess for me, a take home is that I would hope, I don't know that we can know for sure, but I would hope that at least part of the reason she was able to do this the way that she did and be as effective as she was at it was due to her liberal arts education as a scientist. She was trained as a scientist, right? But not just any scientist. She was trained at a liberal arts school as a scientist.
She literally says, "This, I believe, is a result of my education as well as my time in America."
Sure.
To think of what can be done rather than worrying about what can not, and then just when she saw all the connections, she's was able to see how all these things.
And there you see the kind of not just the integration of disciplines among themselves, but the integration of disciplinary knowledge with ethics, and action.
Well, in fact, you see in a science of nature, the world that I cannot change as such. The trees need water. There's an interplay between trees and waterbeds and so on. Ethics, or moral philosophy, and the various choices that are within our control. There's also the issue of applying the arts of thinking in order to arrange which concepts or which causes depend upon which for horological analysis. And there's the technical knowledge that you got with respect to the scientific studies. So it looks like there's at least 4 dimensions that seem to be in the picture.
Oh, I just think it's really interesting that she attended a Catholic college, obviously would have respected what comes from faith a lot, but she was willing to be open-minded enough to recognize that the problem started with the fig tree, which was cut down because the church was built, which is just a really interesting kind of thing that I think a lot of people would have a blind spot to. They wouldn't want to look there, but she was looking everywhere, which is really what you want the faith and reason integration to look like, just being open-minded and getting at the truth.
Even though Jesus very clearly says, "Don't cut down the fig tree." This is the gospel.
Just curse the one later.
Yes.
Give it a chance.
Because it was saying, because it wasn't sure you can cut it down.
Yeah, you can do anything you want, but...
Constructive procrastination.
Wasn't even a time for figs.
All right, so I guess, I would reiterate that I would encourage you to encourage your students to get familiar with who she is, who she was, and what that means for them.
There's one copy of this in the library. I have a couple copies at the Mount Library that I can bring over if people want to read this. So if you shoot me an email that you want a copy, anybody can take this one because I can check it out to you. It's checked out to me, but I can check it out to you. I know how to do those. So if anybody wants it, okay.
We have copies in our department as well.
Okay.
Because that's still in print.
Yeah.
You can buy it on Google Books.
Yeah.
I read it.
Yeah, because
It's a good
Was this a helpful discussion? Yes. To empower you to speak about the ex-Corte excerpt and the related Lungari?
I'll be honest, my big worry about Kim's students and Steve is unless we also tell them, you're going to run into a vocabulary that you don't know. How are we going to help them deal with that? I'm sorry, I see a lot of preliminary needs. I think it's wonderful to think that when they get to our discussion, we'll be able to talk them through it. But I think tossing some... Kim, at one of the meetings early, Kim said something about being most concerned about the kid in the back of the room with his hat turned backwards or his eyes not looking because the student...
You want to know what I do with that kid?
Help me.
I go back to him and I say, will you please take off your hat and will you please come sit right here?
But
they do. But they don't say
no, I'm not. What Kim was saying was sure we can welcome them when we see them. Are we giving them these readings before they come to meet us for the first time?
This will be their second week of meeting, right? So they'll have had...
So the first week, I get to say to them, you're going to run into some vocabulary. Here's what I do when I run into vocabulary.
Yeah, you'll have a chance to do that. And perhaps, what we don't need is for them to understand everything that they read in the excerpt. And instead, it could be a helpful habit of mine to be patient with things you don't fully understand as you read them. I don't want to put anyone in a position that they're going to be, so frustrated.
The first week, they say, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
That's not...
I did find one thing that helped with that even in class today. I just asked the student
if anybody needs to go.
So this 5 most important words, and you tabulated them and closed in. You end up with about 6 words in your reading, and the most important one, the rest of one.
So I want to speak to Dan's point because I think that's really important. I think the first reading is very, honestly, students are going to think that's boring. So I have a suggestion that they read the second one first, and then talk about the second one first, and then talk about the Pope's article. Because I think it will be easier for them to talk about this, because they can relate to it, and I think it's easier to read than the first one. Yeah. So that will draw those students who's in the back of the room not paying attention into the discussion at the beginning, because that's something they can talk about. And then this higher, lofty discussion can come at the end after they've had time to process a real-life application of it.
And after they start talking too.
Are you saying at the end of that first session or at the end later in the semester?
No, I'm talking, do the 2 readings, but
as the instructor, you would have control over the...
But I also think it's good advice, actually.
And also, when they write their reflection, they're going to summarize, reflect, and write down questions. And that's a really great platform, I think, to Jan's point. But if you don't understand something, or what can we specifically target as a class?
Sure. I think when they do bring questions, I think it's important to give an opportunity for anybody in the class, except if it's going to be that kid who wants to answer everything, but so them to realize that sometimes the answer to the question is in the community. It's not always the instructor, right? Because that'll encourage conversations outside the classroom, and conversations outside the classroom are it's a failure. Sorry, I've been trying not to use that word as a noun. Anyway, it's a failure if we don't generate those types of conversations, right? If the conversation is only in the classroom, it doesn't spill out into the greater community, then we want to create that. We want people from different sections talking about the conversations that they had in class, and I think that'll help.
And I do think this week, where we have the double core text, it would be wise not to assign a third thing, and to just let them be, you know. So usually you're going to have an opportunity to assign a complementary text if you chose.
So are you recommending that we give her a summary, the background summary about her life as well?
And then just the 6 pages from that book. Part of our goal, I think, was we wanted them to see her, we wanted them to have her writing, her voice.
The illustrious alumna.
Not my voice.
Right.